I want to tell you about a historical figure that I am 99% certain you do not know about already. Her name is Marozia, or Marozia, and she was born in 890 in Rome and would ultimately give birth to one pope, be the grandmother to two popes, the great-grandmother to two more popes, and the great-great-grandmother of another pope. That is 6 popes descended from her. One of my biggest sources on this is the book The Bad Popes by E.R. Chamberlain. However, it did come out in the 60s, so some of the info a little dated. You can find videos about this woman on YouTube, but they are all dark and oh my goodness, the bloodiness, which is there. Absolutely. But also this is hysterical. I love history because people have always been as they are, and people have always thought that they are on the brink of the end of the world. So Marozia is born to her father Theophylact and her mother Theodora. We have so little information about anyone in this family, and the information that we do have is often extremely biased, so we have to take that into account. Theophylact, we have no idea where he comes from, but he establishes himself as one of the most important people in all of Rome. Her mother is Theodora, and again, we don't know where she comes from, but she is also going to be named a senatress or a senatrix. Oh, I love that word, like her daughter Marozia will be. So when Marozia is growing up, the papacy is in disarray, and it's going to be in disarray for this whole story. For example, when she is about 7 years old in 897, there is an event called the Cadaver Synod. Pope Stephen VI decides that a former pope who is now dead, Formosus, committed crimes. So he has his cronies dig up the dead Formosus. They put the corpse on trial, and it is convicted. He does have lawyers. The cadaver does have lawyers. They do not say a single word, which is probably smart. They tear the body apart, throw the pieces in the river, and the people of Rome have kind of been letting the papacy do its own thing for a while, and they say, no, this is too far. Bro, no. So they depose the Pope, imprison him, and he is ultimately strangled to death in prison. Just to set the scene. There are so many popes I'm going to skip over. Just go with it. In late 903, Marozia is about 13. Theophylact, Marozia's dad, who is now like leader of Rome, he's a senator, he's extremely powerful. He calls up this guy Sergius, who had been a cardinal, had been a candidate for pope at one point, but lost and fled the city. Calls up Sergius and he says, you know what? I've got a lot of swords. Let's overthrow this anti-pope, huh? Let's put you in there, baby. There are so many anti-popes. I don't have time. So in 904, Sergius becomes Sergius III, a pope, and an era begins for 60 years that is known as the Saeculum Obscurum, or the pornocracy. So Sergius is pope, Theophylact is pulling the strings, running the show. They might be cousins. We don't know. But basically, Sergius puts Theophylact in control of like all of Rome and the papacy's money. Now, some people say that when Marozia is about 15, she becomes Sergius's mistress. It's a better story that way, but I kind of doubt that it's true. I think part of that is just wishful thinking, that I don't want a 15-year-old, having sex with an old man. But the good narrative that comes out of this, the sexy story, is that Marozia with Sergius III has a son, John, who ultimately will become pope. However, to me, the timeline doesn't really match up. It also, to me, is just not politically a good move. Like, they have already given Sergius III the papacy. Why would they need also their daughter to have some kind of sexual connection with him, especially when, for most of human history, a woman's virginity is an extremely valuable economic commodity? It just wouldn't make sense to me, especially because when she gets married, she marries a man named Alberic of Spoleto, who has a bunch of swords and a bunch of fighting men and has had some military successes. So that is a lot more useful than a guy who already owes you a debt. So that's how I interpret this, right? I have 7 pages of notes, single-spaced. And they ultimately have 4 or 5 kids, and 3 of their sons will be important. Okay. John, the eldest, Alberic Jr., Alberic II, and then David or Deodatus. There's a lot of names that are like, maybe this is the Latin name, maybe this is like the anglicized version of it. So David/Deodatus. They have a daughter. We don't know her name. Since John is not born, like I said, until the year after her marriage, that leads me to think that he is Alberic's son instead of Sergius's, but there can be political benefits to her passing him off as the son of a pope. It's nice to have options if you're doing a lot of scheming. Theophylact becomes the consul, the head of Rome, and as all of this is happening, they are cultivating successors and just people to be on their side throughout the city, inside the papacy. So there is a young man named John who is coming up, unrelated to the son. We'll get to the son later, right? John is possibly a cousin of Theodora, Marozia's mother. He's also possibly a lover. Again, most of the information we have about this family, especially Marozia, is written by a guy who is writing after the fact and is on like the opposing team basically when he is writing. So he has a bias to describe Theodora as, what is it, a shameless harlot. So this John, Theodora's John, becomes pope. They put him in. There is this like temporary triumvirate of Theophylact and the political power, Marozia's husband, Alberic, and his military power, and then Theodora's John, who's the pope, who has this religious power, right? But then Theophylact dies. I don't know how it happens. Maybe it's something shady. Maybe it's being a person in the 10th century. Alberic also dies, and then Theodora drops out of the narrative. So the only people we know about are Marozia and her kids, who are not yet important, and John, who was put in place, who is the Pope, put in place by Theodora. This is John the 10th. Marozia doesn't like John the 10th. We don't know why. Some people say it's because, oh, he was screwing her mom. We don't know that. We just don't know that. But it could be that this is a guy who, owes allegiance to her mother, but not necessarily her. It could also be that John is doing a good job at being a pope and he is not easily manipulated by Marozia. Maybe he doesn't, toe the party line as much. So she decides he's got to go. John is looking for allies outside of Rome. He starts talking to Hugh of Provence. Provence is in southern France, if you don't know, if you didn't have like a Vincent van Gogh phase that was started by that one episode of Doctor Who when you were in high school. Hugh wants John to name him King of Italy, which is a thing that the popes can basically do. If you have two guys fighting to be king of Italy and one of them, God's representative on earth said, this is my guy, and the Pope has like swords. The Pope has like a military force. It varies in size and strength and all of that stuff, but that is part of it. Hugh says, come talk to me, make me king of Italy. John says, you know what, okay, I'll go to Provence and chat with you. And one thing you will learn about this story, don't leave Rome. Don't leave Rome, guys. So Marozia sees her chance. What does she do? Her husband is dead. She needs a second husband, so she marries Hugh's half-brother, Guy of Tuscany, who has a lot of military might. While this is also happening, a reason that she might not like John is that when her husband Alberic, Duke of Spoleto, dies, instead of that going or like remaining sort of in Marozia's realm of influence, John gives it to his brother Peter. And that's another reason why Marozia might not like him. So when John is out of town, her and Guy, her new husband, come into town and they get Peter, who is this Duke of Spoleto. They kill him. When he comes back, throw John in a dungeon and he dies about a year later. Some people say he's smothered with a pillow. Some people say you're in a dungeon for a year. Chances of survival are not great. Marozia's oldest son, with Alberic, who's also named John, is now about 18. He's a little too young to be pope just yet. So Marozia puts a couple different guys in. One lasts 8 months and then he dies. Puts in another one. He dies after 2 years. And when that one dies, now John is a little bit older. The time has come. There are all of these rumors, remember, that John might be Sergius's son. I don't know how much like those were rumors then, currently as she was alive. But if you start this rumor that your son, the Pope, is the son of another Pope, then maybe you don't need the Pope to be elected because you can make it a hereditary title, giving her even more control over the papacy. At this point, as I understand it, it's not conclave. Great movie. It is more an election of not the people of Rome, as far as I understand it, but like the aristocratic and wealthy families of Rome. So her son John has become Pope John the 11th. Now, by this point, Guy of Tuscany, her second husband, has died. We don't know how. So she needs a third husband. And guess who she marries? You remember Hugh, right? Who was trying to ally himself with John, who was the half-brother of her second husband. So she and Hugh get engaged. And normally people would say this is incest, right? This is why there were issues with Henry VIII marrying Catherine of Aragon. You are marrying your former husband's relative. But guess who is the head of like all of morality in Christendom? Her son, the Pope. So he says, yeah, mommy, it's fine. And now at this point, because of John, because of the other John that she kicked out, Hugh is now also king of Italy. So he is very valuable as a political asset to her. This is probably my favorite part of the story. Hugh makes his way to Rome for the wedding. And I just want you to imagine this wedding, right? Close your eyes if you like. You are in not a church, but this ceremony happens in the main military fortress. And the Pope is the officiant. You have this woman who is his mother, who's the most influential woman in Rome, and the king of Italy getting married. And I want you to drag your eye away from the Pope and her husband and the king and drag your eye to the shadows, to Marozia's second son, also named Alberic after his father, remember? He's about 18 and he's been in the shadows. She has been pulling the strings to get John, her eldest, in power. She has been trying to get a husband that will be valuable. And he realizes she doesn't really need me. In fact, there is a rumor circulating that Hugh, her new husband, wants to blind Alberic, which in the thought of the time will make him effectively useless, right? And again, like all of this is not only rumor then, but rumor now. We have so many conflicting sources or no sources. So some people also say that not only is Alberic, does he get word of this plot by Hugh, he also hears that Marozia knows about the plot and is fine with it. So his mother knows that he's going to die and is like, sure, fine, whatever. Our power just died. And I think that the whole building, because someone was vacuuming upstairs, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter to us. So the wedding happens. They go to the wedding banquet afterwards. And in all of the rituals of it, Alberic has to pour out some water for Hugh to wash his hands in. Some people say that like Marozia gave Alberic this job as an humiliation. The power's... Was it back on for a second? There's construction going on in the front of our building. So as he's doing this, Alberic, on purpose, maybe not, maybe accidentally, spills some of the water onto Hugh. And Hugh slaps him across the face. Alberic runs out of the banquet and speaks to the people of Rome. And this we have a quote for, but again, it's written by the guy who does not like Marozia. The majesty of Rome has sunk to such depths that now she, the city, obeys the orders of harlots. His mom. Could there be anything viler than the city of Rome should be brought to ruin by the impurities of one woman, and that those who were once our slaves, women, should now be our masters? If he, Hugh, should hit me, his stepson, when he had only recently come as our guest, what do you suppose he will do when he has taken root in the city? And I gotta say, one of my favorite characters in this story is the people of Rome. So they rise up. They capture Marozia, but Hugh escapes by throwing a rope out of a window and crawling away, and he goes to his forces. And Marozia is put in a dungeon for like 5 years, just screaming her head off, and eventually dies. But her legacy lives on, babies. Only one of her descendants, one of 6, is Pope. We've got 3 more pages. Now, Alberic is in control of the city, basically, and he controls it for 22 years. And it's not necessarily a good time, but it is perhaps a less turbulent time. And by controlling the Pope, he controls so much political power outside of Rome, right? Across all of Europe. And Hugh of Provence keeps trying to take Rome, but ultimately Alberic and Hugh come to an agreement, which is that Alberic will marry Hugh's daughter, Alda. So Alberic is marrying his stepfather's daughter, the stepfather that he, raised a whole Roman mob against right after he married his mom. You don't need to really have the whole family tree in your mind. Just sit back, relax, enjoy, okay? We're only on Pope 1. Alberic and Alda have a son together named Octavian. They have several sons together, but we're sticking on Octavian right now. When Octavian is in his late teens, early 20s, Alberic dies, possibly from a fever. As he's dying, he makes the aristocracy promise that Octavian will be the next pope. So the current pope dies about a year later, and Octavian is named pope. It becomes clear that Octavian is a lot more like his grandmother and grandfather Hugh than his father Alberic. He mismanages the papal money. He has these sort of armed goons that terrorize the people of Rome. He gambles. He's having so much sex everywhere, and he gives his mistresses not only money but also land, which is a real affront to the landed aristocracy. After a few years, there's a new king in Italy, Berengar, and he wants Rome. So Berengar brings his forces outside of the city, and this kind of knocks Octavian awake. His people are upset, so he asks King Otto of Germany for help. And he says, if you help me, if you get Berengar out of this, I will make you king of Germany, which he already is, and Italy. And Otto says, yeah, sure. He comes over, and the Holy Roman Empire is born. February 2nd, 961, with the appointment of Otto, Groundhog Day. Octavian and Otto are, in terms of character, polar opposites. Octavian is young and impulsive and drunk and horny, and Otto is in his 50s. He is cautious and cunning. He is a statesman and a diplomat and a head of a great military force. Otto stays in Rome for 2 weeks, and then he leaves Rome. He's got to do emperor things, right? And Octavian, oh my gosh, he goes back to Berengar, the guy who was knocking on his door. The guy that he asked Otto to kick out. And he says, hey, Berengar, Otto left some people in my city. Can you come get them? And if you do, I'll give you that crown that I just gave that other guy. Huh? Berengar says, let me think about it. Otto hears this, and because he, again, is an older, level-headed man, he says, yeah, I don't know what's up with him. It's a phase. Give Octavian a minute and he'll calm down. Otto has other things to do. He's an emperor. Berengar sees that Otto is not acting. And he initially hesitates because Otto just, kicked his ass. But he says, if he's not going to do anything, then yeah, I'll come in and take his crown. Why not? So Otto hears and he says, no, we're not doing this, guys. No. He marches to Rome, and Octavian and Berengar flee, much like Octavian's grandfather climbing out a window at his botched wedding. So Otto gets to Rome, and there's no pope. So he puts in his own guy, right? And Rome, both the aristocracy and the masses, says, who the fuck are you, a German guy, telling us who our pope should be? But again, Otto thinks that he's got everything under control. There's a new pope. He's got stuff to do. So he bounces out. And right away, little Octavian and Berengar come back in. But then, before Otto can, come whip him into shape, Octavian dies. And how does he die, you might say? Well, he dies as he lives. So he either has a stroke while having sex, or the husband of the woman he is with catches them in the act and beats him so badly that he dies of his injuries 3 days later. So Octavian's out. Otto puts a new guy in, unrelated to Marozio's family, but give it a little time, because who emerges from the shadows but another brother? Do you remember, 5 pages ago, when I said that Marozia has 3 sons? John, who becomes Pope, Alberic, who does the whole wedding stuff, and then David/Deodatus. David has a son named Benedict, who becomes Pope in 974, 10 years after Octavian dies. And he is appointed by Otto II, one of Otto's descendants. There's some messiness getting him in, but there always is, basically, whenever you get a new pope, it seems. What's interesting is that Benedict VII is not mentioned in that Chamberlain book. I think because he's like not a bad pope. His big legacy is that he bans simony or tries to crack down on it, which is the selling of church offices, which will become ironic later. So that's our third Theophylact, Marozia, on John, Octavian, and Benedict VII. We're halfway through. Now we're into the great-grandson popes. Benedict VII dies in 983. No kids, nothing. Until 1012, when Benedict VIII comes in. Because you remember Octavian, guy who died fucking, he has a brother. He has a brother, Gregory, Count of Tusculum. Gregory is not a pope, but 2 of his 3 sons will be, and his 3rd son will have a son who's a pope. Got it? Those are the last of the 6. Gregory, he stays in the mix. You know, he's moving and shaking. He's in Rome. He's Count of Tusculum, which was created by Theophylact in the beginning. Otto dies. Otto II comes in. He is in good favor with them. He's given a navy command. There is no navy, but it's a nice gesture. And he's very close with Pope Sylvester II. But he's a Theophylact at heart. He's going to be a little shady. So when the moment arises, Gregory betrays Otto III and Sylvester II, his friends. He has been on their side, and the people of Rome support him. Because again, this is a German king putting a French pope in. What? Not for us, Romans, no. He leads the people of Rome into a revolt against Sylvester, and my pages are out of order again. And as far as I can tell, he does that overthrow, and then he just kind of steps back. He lets this other really powerful family, the Crescenti, who were in power before he did that, keep running the ship. And then I have no idea what happens to him for a decade. But it seems like just before Gregory dies, he puts one of his sons in charge of the papacy, which is Benedict VIII, 4th family pope, great-grandson of Marozia. And he's more or less fine. He's not in the bad popes. He has a good relationship with the Holy Roman Emperor. He says Roman families, no more funny business. He tries to make peace with the Normans. More or less a good guy. And when he dies, he is immediately succeeded by his brother, John the 19th. And when Benedict is in power, his brother John is a senator. And then when John is pope, he elevates Alberic. So there is family raises family, basically. And again, as far as I can tell, John the 19th, fine. This is Pope 5 of Marozia's 6. But Alberic III, Benedict and John's brother, has a son. It's like the ghost of his great-great-grandmother whispers in the ear of Alberic III's son, also named Benedict, and says, let's get messy. Let's get messy one last time. Because this is her final pope. So let me introduce you to Benedict IX. John the 19th, which is his uncle, dies. Benedict steps right in. And Benedict the 9th, you know, he's 20 when he comes in, maybe even younger. Some people say he's a demon, as they do. Some people say he's just incompetent. Within the first couple months, there's an assassination attempt. And I don't know that this is necessarily anything he did. It's just like he's on someone else's opposing team. But he is mostly in his castle, trying not to expose himself. But when you're pope, you gotta leave the castle to give mass. So while he's giving mass, there are assassins in like every corner, right? Ready to strike. And then there is a solar eclipse. And again, what a great scene in a movie. And so the assassins are like, oh, never mind. Maybe not. But Benedict hears about this, so he runs away. He leaves Rome. And after a while, he comes back, and then he's forced out again. I think he's forced out this time because he is being like his ancestor, Octavian. He's fucking too much. He's spending they only have like 2 pennies in the papal coffers, and he is spending them. He's just being a mess. So he gets kicked out, and he goes to the Holy Roman Emperor, and he says, please, can you put me back there? So they do. And then the exact same thing happens again. You're fucking too much, go away. And at some point in all of this, in the going and coming and going and coming, Benedict says, this job sucks. My dad put me in here. Everybody was trying to kill me. I don't want it. Which, kind of relatable. I understand it. Some people say that he wants to get married And the Pope technically cannot get married and have kids, but when has that stopped literally anyone in this story? So he says, I don't want to do this job, but I like that this job has money. I need some cash to help me in my non-papal life. And he decides to sell the papacy, the seat of St. Peter, the highest office in all of Christendom, God's representative on earth. He says, who wants to be the Pope? Anybody? Anybody? He sells it to Giovanni Gratiano. Giovanni is a holy man. He wants to bring some dignity back to the church, so he does the most unholy, undignified thing and pays for its highest office. And this is the thing that history seems to like hate Benedict the Ninth the most for. Not the fucking and the murdering, but the fact that he could degrade this seat as if it isn't degraded enough that it could be bought and sold. We're on to the last page of notes, guys. Calm down. And then what do you guess? What do you guess happens? At this point, there are two popes, right? There's the one that he sold the seat to, Giovanni, and then there is another pope that sort of the rest of Rome has put their sway behind. And Benedict, outside looking in, now not a pope, he goes, well, if you can't decide, like if we don't know who pope is, why not throw my hat in the ring? And everyone says, no, go away. And he does. He disappears out of the record. Some people say that he atoned for his sins. We don't know. Just like his great-great-great-grandfather Theophylact, he ceases to be. But I will tell you, there is a Wikipedia page called List of Sexually Active Popes that if you want some more info, because this is just a chapter in the very, very long story. Now, I'm done with this story, but I'm not done with popes. I haven't even talked about the Borgia, which is what got me interested in the papacy in the first place, and I have not done any research yet on Pope Joan, and you know I love anyone with the name Joan, but let me know what you'd like to hear, because I know this is so different from my film essays. I am thinking about doing some videos where I watch an actor's entire filmography, so I'm thinking Barbara Stanwyck, Katharine Hepburn, I'm also thinking Vincent Price, and Tim Curry. I could also do a video, I have a letterbox list called Nun Cinema, maybe I'll do that. Endless options. You let me know. Thank you for sticking around. Love ya.